Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. China is back to its old tricks, claiming land that was never theirs. They've long said that the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh belongs to them. Last week, they detained an Indian from Arunachal Pradesh because her passport mentioned her place of birth. How does China justify this harassment? And how has New Delhi responded to this latest provocation? We'll tell you all about it on the show. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping called up Donald Trump. That alone should be the headline, because Chinese leaders hardly initiate an outreach. We'll tell you what they discussed and why Trump dialed Tokyo right after this call. A dormant volcano erupted in Ethiopia and flights in New Delhi got cancelled. We'll explain why. Also in focus, another sham Khalistan referendum amid the India-Canada reset. Why Afghanistan wants direct flights from Indian cities to Kandahar. Why the world's super rich are moving to Dubai. How Pakistan can add 6% to its GDP. How Ayodhya is central to India's temple economy. How big tech may be stealing your personal data to train bots, and how a once-in-a-300-year storm has hit Thailand. The headlines first. Afghanistan's Taliban government vows to respond to overnight strikes that it blamed on Pakistan. At least 10 people were killed in this attack, but Pakistan's military has denied striking its neighbor. The bombardment came after a suicide attack in Peshawar. Thousands joined protests across Syria's Alawite heartland. They are angry over the attacks targeting the minority community. The worst was in March, when hundreds of people were killed. These protests are the biggest in the region since the fall of Bashar al-Assad last December. Drones crash in Romania and Moldova amid Russian airstrikes on Ukraine. The crash forced Bucharest to deploy fighter jets. Romania and Moldova's airspaces have been repeatedly violated since the Ukraine war began in 2022. This comes as US and Russian officials met in the UAE to discuss the latest Ukraine peace plan. Japan launches its own version of Doge. It was the US government's cost-cutting department. Tokyo is trying to ease concerns over a multi-billion-dollar stimulus package. Last week, the Prime Minister pledged huge government spending to boost the economy. This is despite fears that it would worsen Japan's massive debt burden. And the Indian men's cricket team is set to face off against Pakistan once again. It will take place in Colombo next year during the T20 World Cup. India has beaten Pakistan in the last 6 encounters, including the Asia Cup final. The World Cup is being co-hosted by India and Sri Lanka.
Arunachal, not India, China, your visa not acceptable, your basically passport is invalid.
China has done it again. Just when things were looking up, just when ties were improving, they have provoked India once again, this time by targeting an Indian citizen in Shanghai. And you should hear why. As always, China has invented ludicrous reasons. They have rejected a passport over the place of birth. Here's the full story. It features a woman called Pema Thongdok. She hails from the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. It's a state in India's northeast. But Pema Thongdok has been living in the UK for 14 years now. She works there as a financial advisor. Last week, she was traveling from the UK to Japan. In between, she had a transit stop in Shanghai in China. She landed there on the 21st of November, and that's when the drama unfolded. Listen to this.
I was traveling on my holiday from London Gatwick to Japan via a transit in Shanghai. And basically, I went past the e-gates happily queuing up for the security gates to transfer onto my next flight onto Osaka in Japan. And one of the officials from the Chinese immigration came over and singled me out of the queue, basically said, look, India, took my name and something and took me out. So I asked her what is happening, and she basically didn't say much and just basically asked me to follow her. Took me close to the e-gates where there is the immigration, the manual counters for the immigration. And then she went on to say, Arunachal, not India, China, your visa not acceptable, your basically passport is invalid.
Shocking, isn't it? Let me repeat what she said. Pema Tongdok was singled out at the security gate because they had a problem with her passport. You see, Indian passports mention your place of birth in India, they mention it. In this case, it said Rupa in Arunachal Pradesh. That's her place of birth. And that's what the Chinese objected to. Beijing claims that Arunachal Pradesh is a part of Chinese territory. It dates back to claims made by Mao Zedong. Mao had a so-called five-finger theory. He called Tibet the right palm of China, and that palm had 5 fingers: Ladakh, Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, and Arunachal Pradesh. And he said all these places belong to China. That was his claim. That was Mao's five-finger theory. Today's China still pushes it. So it does not recognize Indian control over Arunachal Pradesh. China calls Arunachal Pradesh South Tibet. And it says this is disputed territory, it's not Indian territory. Which brings us back to Shanghai. Here's what happened after Pema Tongdok was stopped.
After a lot of ordeal, because there was no Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi was really slow, and even if I did get connected to Wi-Fi, you can't open Google, you can't open any of the socials like your Facebook or WhatsApp. So I couldn't get in touch with my family for a very long time. Ultimately, with a lot of harassment and basically no access to food, not allowing me to leave that part of the terminal. There wasn't a proper space given to us to basically rest after a 12-hour flight all the way from London. At one point in time, because I kept going up to them every hour or so, asking them what is the issue, why they're holding me back, what legal rights or rules do you have that says that Indian nationals, and they would just dismiss every time I tried to speak to them, in fact, in a very unprofessional manner.
That sounds like harassment. She was held for 18 hours, she was given no food, she was given no information, and her passport was taken away. That's what she said. How does China justify this? Well, they simply deny all these claims. China says all rules and regulations were followed.
First of all, Jiangnan is China's territory. China never acknowledges the so-called Arunachal Pradesh illegally set up by India. As for the individual case you mentioned, we've learned that during the whole process, China's border inspection authorities have gone through the whole process in accordance with laws and regulations and had just enforcement and fully protected the lawful rights and interests of the person concerned. There's no so-called compulsory measures, detainment or harassment. The airlines also provided a place for rest, drinking, and food for the person concerned.
You heard her. China says Arunachal Pradesh is illegal. Now we call it peak delusion. This is a state that is proud to be in the Indian Union. Around 74% adults in Arunachal Pradesh voted in Indian elections. 74%. So China can forget its claims over this state. It is an integral part of India. As for the Shanghai episode, China is rejecting all the claims. So you've got two versions now. Pema Tongdok has described her ordeal in detail, but China says it's all fake news and that there was no detainment or harassment. So who is speaking the truth? We'll come to that in a bit, but first, let's complete Pema's story. She somehow managed to contact a friend in the UK, and through them she informed the Indian consulate in Shanghai. After that, the officials took over. They helped her board a flight back to India via Thailand. As of now, the government of India has not released an official statement, but reports say they have lodged an official protest. They've lodged a protest both in Beijing and in New Delhi. India has told China that Arunachal Pradesh is an integral part of India, and that is where things stand. Now, coming back to my question, who's speaking the truth? Well, China has a history of such treatment, of targeting Indians from Arunachal Pradesh. This time they have rejected a passport. In the past, they have used stapled visas. Your normal visas are stamped or imprinted on the passport, but a stapled visa is not. It is attached using pins or staples. It is meant to show that this is not a normal visa. China started issuing staple visas in the year 2005. This was for Indians from Arunachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. And the intent is clear. It's a way to further their expansionist claims. Think of staple visas as documentary expansionism. China uses these visas to undermine India's integrity, and India rejects them as a valid travel document. In fact, we saw this flare up in 2023. That's when India pulled out of a sports tournament in protest. This tournament was being held in China. India was sending a wushu team. Wushu is a type of martial art. The Indian wushu team had 3 athletes from Arunachal Pradesh. China issued staple visas for all 3 of them. India protested the move and pulled out of the tournament. So my point is, this is not new for Beijing. They have a history of weaponizing documents, whether it's altering maps to claim disputed lands, or rejecting passports based on birthplace, or issuing staple visas to undercut your neighbors. And we don't expect anything different from China. But if they deny this latest incident, they must show proof. Airports are crawling with security cameras. Use that footage to prove your case. If not, accept your mistake. Because this is not some random airport error. This is a major diplomatic mistake, that too in the middle of a crucial reset. India and China were locked in a border standoff for 5 years, from early 2020 to late 2024. Then last year, both sides struck a border deal. This year, the Indian Prime Minister visited China for the SCO summit. There's been an effort to normalize ties. So why is China provoking India in the middle of all of this? Is this some strange Chinese mind game? Or is this China sabotaging the reset? I guess that's the broader question surrounding this controversy. Meanwhile, China has opened another front with the United States. Xi Jinping is testing Donald Trump. Yesterday, he called the American president without any prior warning. And this rarely happens. Usually, it is the United States which initiates contact. This time, Beijing made the first move. Although China's foreign ministry has denied it, there are multiple reports that confirm that it was the Chinese side that initiated the call. And that makes it the first such outreach in over 2 decades. The last time something like this happened was in 2001, the year 2001. Back then, it was Chinese President Jiang Zemin and US President George H.W. Bush. This was right after the 9/11 attacks. Terrorists had struck the World Trade Center in New York, so Beijing reached out to Washington. And even then, Chinese President Jiang did not call his American counterpart. He sent a condolence message by telegram. In that context, yesterday's call stands out, a Chinese president calling the American president. And what was the call about? Well, Trump was quick to share the details. He issued a statement on his social media platform, Truth Social. He called the phone call, and I'm quoting, very good. Trump said that he discussed many topics with Xi, from the war in Ukraine to the fentanyl crisis and the trade of soybeans. They talked about all of it. Trump also announced his visit to China. He said he'll go to Beijing in April next year. And he made it sound like a routine call, like a polite check-in. But China's statement paints a very different picture. Because Trump left out 2 key points from his statement, Taiwan and Japan. Trump did not mention it. China did. On both fronts, Taiwan and Japan, China has issued pointed messages to the United States. Look at what Xi Jinping said on Taiwan. This is according to the Chinese statement. Xi told Trump that China's position remains unchanged and that Taiwan belongs to China. In fact, let me quote from what Xi Jinping said. Taiwan's return to China was an integral part of the post-war international order. So Xi is spelling out his red lines, not just to Washington, but to Tokyo as well. And that's the second big issue that came up. The Chinese statement does not name Japan directly, but it does make a reference, an indirect reference to Japan. Again, let me quote, China and the US once fought shoulder to shoulder against fascism and militarism and should work all the more closely together to safeguard the fruits of victory in World War II at present. That mention of World War II, it's not just about history, it's a reminder. China is reminding the US about its actions during World War II and the atrocities that Japan committed on China. You may remember this. During the war, Japan had invaded Taiwan. They occupied significant Chinese territory, including major cities like Shanghai and Nanjing. And they committed atrocities which are well documented. So the Chinese statement bringing up the war is like a veiled strike on Japan, the latest in a series of strikes, in fact. These two countries have been at loggerheads, China and Japan. They've been locked in a standoff. It began a couple of weeks back with a comment from the Japanese Prime Minister. Her name is Sanae Takaichi. She was asked a question. What would Japan do if China attacked Taiwan? That was the question. If China attacks Taiwan, what would Japan do? In response, the Prime Minister suggested that Japan could respond militarily. Of course, Beijing did not take it well, and it has been targeting Japan since then. Beijing has told its citizens, Chinese citizens, to not travel to Japan. This has hit Japan's tourism sector. Beijing has also told airlines to reduce flights to Japan to keep cutting them down till March next year. Beijing has also banned seafood imports from Japan, and it has complained to the United Nations. China has sent a letter to the UN chief criticizing Prime Minister Takaichi's statement. And now, the Chinese have taken this dispute to Donald Trump, which explains Trump's second phone call. After he spoke to Chinese President Xi, Trump dialed Tokyo. He spoke to Prime Minister Takaichi. Xi issued a statement soon after, and she said that Trump had requested the phone call. He briefed her about his conversation with Xi. He called her a quote-unquote very close friend, and he told her that she could call him anytime.
President Trump told me that we are very close friends and that I could call him at any time. Regarding the content of our talks, as it is related to diplomatic exchanges, I would like to refrain from disclosing details.
Now, this may sound routine, it's anything but. This is China making moves and dragging the US deeper into the Taiwan dispute. It is forcing Trump to pick a side. So where does he stand on Taiwan? Well, Trump has not spelled out his position clearly, although the US and Taiwan do have a defense agreement, an agreement that says if China attacks, the US will defend Taiwan. But it doesn't say how will it defend Taiwan. Militarily, politically, diplomatically, it's not clear. And that is by design. For decades, US presidents have been vague about defending Taiwan. They call it strategic ambiguity. Trump may be doing the same. He has shown little interest in a direct military role, but he hasn't cut Taiwan off either. The US still sells weapons to Taiwan, and this is what China wants to stop. So will Donald Trump oblige? Because stepping back now will have consequences, both for the US and for President Trump. It could damage US credibility in the region, or whatever is left of it. It could damage the credibility, especially with allies like Japan. More importantly for Trump, it could hurt his defense deals. So can he ignore China? Well, that comes with its own set of risks, including jeopardizing his trade truce with China. As things stand, Donald Trump is caught between a rock and a hard place. His own policy of using tariffs to build pressure has narrowed his room to maneuver. The tariffs made a lot of splash when they were announced, but now they've become a liability for Trump, and he finds himself boxed in. For nearly 12,000 years, Ethiopia's Haile Gabi volcano was silent. Empires rose and fell, borders changed, humanity invented agriculture, electricity lit up houses, smartphones changed the world, streaming services invaded lives, but Haile Gabi slept on. It became a part of the landscape, permanent, predictable, and harmless. Until the morning it wasn't. The morning it woke up. It started with a grumble, a column of ash shooting almost 14 kilometers into the sky. This was Haile Gabi waking up after 12,000 years. It was terrifying for the locals. This was supposed to be a dormant volcano. Now, suddenly, it was spewing ash. The village close to it was covered in ash. Thankfully, there were no casualties, but no one expected these plumes of ash and smoke. You see, volcanic ash and smoke is not like ordinary smoke. It does not dissipate politely. In this case, the ash contained tiny shards of volcanic glass, pulverized rocks, and specks of minerals. Together, they rose like a pillar. And then came the jet streams. The plume began to spread. From Ethiopia, it crossed the Red Sea, then Yemen, then Oman, then Pakistan, and finally, northern India. It may not have been obvious. No one woke up to find their cars covered in grey dust. Instead, the arrival was subtle, the kind of phenomenon that only satellites can see. A thin haze at a very high altitude. And Delhi is already used to bad air. It has consistently had high AQI for weeks. So by the time this plume approached, Delhi's air was already toxic. The volcano did not have a dramatic effect. It was like adding a teaspoon of salt to a sea. But what it did affect were flights. High in the skies, this volcanic ash is a big problem. Airlines fly through the same altitudes where volcanic ash likes to settle. And this affects the planes. It melts inside engines, it scratches windshields, and it fools the sensors. Volcanic ash also contains toxic gases. They can enter the plane's ventilation system, which can lead to a drop in the cabin's air quality and cause respiratory troubles. So while the people may not have noticed it, the volcano in Ethiopia was a big problem for planes in India. There was a flurry of flight cancellations. Air India cancelled 11 flights, so did Indigo and Akasa. International carriers were rerouted. Flights to West Asian destinations were the worst hit. And this is not the first time something like this is happening. It has happened before. In the year 2010, a volcanic eruption in Iceland caused a shutdown in the European airspace. There were unprecedented closures. More than 300 airports were closed. 100,000 flights were grounded and millions of passengers were affected. In 1989, there was volcanic ash in Alaska. A Boeing plane flew through it. All 4 engines of the plane failed. They tried to restart it multiple times. Thankfully, they could make the plane land safely. A similar incident took place in 1982. This was in Indonesia. A Boeing plane flew through volcanic ash in Indonesia. Again, all 4 engines of the aircraft shut down. Again, there were no casualties, but it tells you how such ash can be deadly for planes. What about people? How dangerous is this ash cloud for you? Well, if you're in North India, rest easy. You're already breathing the toxic air. It cannot get worse than what you have. Plus, the ash cloud is too high. It is too diluted to reach the surface and too fast-moving to settle. So it won't reach you. Delhi's air is already a crisis. The ash came as a visitor. Pollution here is the permanent resident. But this incident is a reminder that our world is deeply interconnected in ways we fail to imagine. One volcano wakes up in Ethiopia and 7,000 kilometers away, Delhi cancels flights. That's also the new climate reality. Borders don't mean much to the sky. For now, the ash is leaving. It is moving towards China. Delhi can go back to its scheduled programming. You don't have to worry about the volcano. Your problem is Delhi's air, and it's not getting better. Justin Trudeau is long gone. He is busy hanging out with pop stars on boats, but his old Khalistani buddies are still here, still provoking and still sabotaging. On Sunday, they emerged from the shadows in Canada's capital, Ottawa. Khalistanis held a so-called referendum, a staged vote on Sikh independence. It was organized by the SFJ, the Sikhs for Justice group. It's a banned terror organization. It is banned in India as a terrorist outfit, but in the West, they pretend to be activists. On Sunday, the SFJ brought some 53,000 people to Ottawa. All of them took part in this bogus vote. Of course, no SFJ event is complete without the usual desecration of Indian flags, the usual hatred against New Delhi, and the usual chants of "Kill India." Apparently, this is what activists and dissidents do. They call for breaking up countries. And how is India responding? Well, let me quote the Indian High Commissioner. Having peaceful protest or asking for something is part of a political process. We have no problem with it. The problem that happens is that back home in India, they see this as Canadian interference in India. Imagine a situation where some other country would do the same thing with Quebec. How do you feel? Now, to give you some context, Quebec is a province in Canada. It has faced its own share of separatism. In fact, Quebec held two referendums on leaving Canada in 1980 and 1995. They voted twice. Both times, the people voted to stay as part of Canada. So here's what the envoy was trying to say. You have a province with a separatist past. Would you let other countries stir trouble there? Maybe host an illegal referendum over it. Chances are you won't like it. What happens in Quebec is Canada's concern. What happens in Punjab is India's concern. This is sovereignty 101. So why can't Canada respect it? To be fair, the new government has made some progress. Prime Minister Mark Carney has tried to reset ties with India. In fact, he met Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G20 on Sunday. Their talks covered trade, defense, investments, and mobility. After the meeting, India and Canada decided to restart their trade talks. Again, this was a big effort. Both sides have been chasing a free trade deal since 2010. But the talks were halted in 2023. That's when Justin Trudeau picked a fight with India. Now, under Prime Minister Carney, the talks are back on. The goal is to double bilateral trade by 2030. It is in this backdrop that Khalistanis held a referendum on Sunday. Their goal was pretty clear: to derail the Modi-Carney talks, to slow down the India-Canada reset. The question is, will it work? In public, the Canadian government is committed to this reset, and frankly, they don't have a choice. Canada's closest ally has virtually turned on them. I'm talking about the United States of America. President Donald Trump has joked about annexing Canada. He has imposed steep tariffs on them, so Canada is looking for alternatives, new partners, new markets, new powerful friends. Enter India. New Delhi too has a similar motive. Canada could be an alternative market for Indian exports. If you can't sell in the US, you could sell in Canada. So the Trump factor has played a big role in this ongoing reset. But what if you take it out? Without Trump, would Canada still want a reset with India? Would India still reciprocate? That's the big if around this turnaround. Whatever the motive, New Delhi must not dilute its stand. Yes, the reset is important, but so is standing up for your integrity and sovereignty. That must be non-negotiable. If you look at the news today, there are two stories about Afghanistan. One is about Pakistani missiles hitting Afghanistan. The other is about proposed Indian flights to Afghanistan. And together, they sum up our story in a nutshell. Pakistan stirring trouble, India delivering progress and hope. That's the story. That has always been the story. Let's talk about India's role first. New Delhi is restarting cargo flights to Afghanistan. So far, two routes have been cleared: Kabul to New Delhi and Kabul to Amritsar. Two flight routes. India says the flights will resume soon. All formalities have been completed on the Indian side. Once the Afghan paperwork is done, the flights can begin. And this is a huge breakthrough. The air corridor can boost India-Afghanistan trade. that too by bypassing Pakistan. And there's more on the cards. The Taliban is asking for flights to Kandahar as well. But chances are India will be wary because this is not a random destination. Kandahar is peak Taliban country. It is home base for them. It also has a traumatic past linked to India. I'm talking about the IC-814 hijacking. It happened back in 1999. 5 armed terrorists hijacked an Indian Airlines plane. The plane was flying from Kathmandu to New Delhi. These hijackers diverted it to Kandahar in Afghanistan. The aircraft remained on Taliban soil for 7 days. 1 passenger was killed in the hijacking. India also had to hand over 3 prisoners to end this crisis. And not just any prisoners. Bona fide terrorists like Masood Azhar. India had to free them. India's then foreign minister handled this exchange. He personally flew to Kandahar to hand over the terrorists. And after that, the passengers were freed. It remains one of the most harrowing episodes in Indian aviation. So returning to Kandahar won't be easy. Yes, aviation has changed, but Kandahar is still stuck in the 1990s. It is the rugged capital of the Taliban movement. Nonetheless, Kabul is pushing for it. Their commerce minister visited India last week. He pushed for more land and air connectivity with India.
चाबहार के मसीर से जो हम बात कर रहे हैं कि इस रास्ते को हम खोलेंगे, इंशाल्लाह ये भी हम बीच में डिस्कस हुआ है और जो ज़मीनी और एयर कॉरिडोर है इस पे मज़ीद काम हो रहा है. इसमें टेक्निकल इंशाल्लाह इसमें मज़ीद कोशिश करेंगे.
That was the second ministerial trip. The first was in October. That's when the Taliban's foreign minister visited India, and he too pushed for more connectivity. And a big reason for that is Pakistan. You see, Afghanistan and Pakistan share a big border. It's around 2,600 kilometers long. Plus, Afghanistan is a landlocked country. It cannot use the sea to export to far-off nations. Meaning, most of Kabul's exports went to Pakistan. In 2023, their trade stood at $1.8 billion. But this year, it's fallen to less than $1 billion. Do you know why? Because of military tensions. Pakistan accuses Kabul of shielding the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, also called the Pakistani Taliban. It's a group that wants to overthrow the Pakistani state. Pakistan says they get support from Kabul. Kabul denies it. This has caused a fair bit of tension and also border clashes. Even last week, the TTP carried out an attack in Peshawar. In response, Pakistan launched missiles. They hit multiple targets in southeastern Afghanistan. The Taliban say at least 10 people were killed. Around 9 of them were children. As tensions spiral, Afghanistan is looking for alternatives, basically new markets to sell goods to. But here's the problem. Around 70% of Afghan exports to Pakistan are perishable. They export things like figs, pistachios, grapes, pomegranates. They don't have a long shelf life. So it is important to harvest and sell them ASAP. And that's where India comes in. An air corridor with India would solve Kabul's problem. But that's only in theory. Since April, Indian airlines have been cut off from Pakistan's airspace. So how would these planes fly? They could take the longer routes over Iran or the Arabian Sea, but again, the problem is obvious. It would be costly and time-consuming. Another option is a sea route, and this one is more pragmatic right now. Let me pull up the map for you. Afghanistan and Iran also share a long border. So technically, Kabul can export goods via Iran. In fact, it's already happening. Afghanistan's trade with Iran is up by 60 to 70% since mid-October. That's when Pakistan closed off their borders. So they turned to Iran. And India has a role to play here. New Delhi operates a terminal at Iran's Chabahar port. So it's a win-win for both sides. Afghanistan can access the sea. India can access Afghanistan and Central Asia. And clearly, India has a lot of leverage in this equation. We hope New Delhi uses that leverage in a positive way. Yes, the regime in Kabul is warm to us, but it's not warm to its own people. Afghan women are still treated as second-class citizens. They are being erased from schools, colleges, and jobs. Let's hope India uses its leverage to address these concerns. Our next story is from Dubai. A city once known for its skyline has become the new playground for the rich. They're relocating to the UAE from all over the world. This year, nearly 10,000 millionaires are expected to move to the UAE, and most of them are choosing Dubai. Among them could be steel tycoon Lakshmi Mittal. We told you about him yesterday. Reports say he's leaving the UK and he'll spend more time in Dubai. But what explains this larger trend? Why are the wealthy heading to Dubai? Because it offers something that most cities don't. No income tax, no inheritance tax, no capital gains tax. That's what makes it attractive. Of course, there's a downside of this rush. Real estate costs are spiking, so are rents and road traffic. For now, the ultra-rich seem to be happy to make this trade-off as long as they get policy certainty and tax concessions. Here's a report.
Dubai is no longer just a city of supercars and skyscrapers. It's becoming something else, a safe haven for the world's ultra-rich. This year alone, nearly 10,000 millionaires are expected to move to the UAE, and a large chunk of them are heading to Dubai. Wealth managers call it a crossroads of capital. A private bank says this shift isn't temporary. It's a trend that will last through the next decade. So what's driving this sudden surge? Why is Dubai the new playground of the wealthy? Let's start with what the city offers. There's no income tax, no capital gains tax, and no inheritance tax either. It's also considered to be one of the safest cities in the world, with high-end healthcare, reliable infrastructure, and a government that promises long-term policy stability. Add to that world-class schools, luxury real estate, and easy travel access to Europe, Africa, and Asia. For many high-net-worth individuals, that ticks every box, which is why the names now arriving in Dubai are making headlines. Lakshmi Mittal, the Indian-origin steel tycoon, apparently will now spend more time in Dubai. Reportedly, he is preparing to leave the United Kingdom. He's worth close to $20 billion. And it's not just individuals. Big institutions are following their clients. JP Morgan, HSBC, BlackRock, Standard Chartered, they're all expanding operations in the Gulf. Dubai is no longer just a transit hub. It's now a permanent base for global wealth. But this isn't just about Dubai. Zoom out, and the larger UAE is also evolving. Abu Dhabi is attracting a different kind of capital, the kind that funds innovation, energy, and finance. It's where global asset managers are setting up shop because the regulatory environment is stable and the incentives are strong. In fact, the UAE is now ranked among the top 3 destinations for migrating millionaires. It sits ahead of the UK, ahead of Hong Kong, and ahead of most traditional financial capitals. But here's the catch. Living in Dubai isn't cheap. The city is now the 7th most expensive in the world, and the 4th most expensive across Europe, West Asia, and Africa. Real estate prices have surged. Luxury rents have spiked. Even basic services cost more. There's a glut of traders, lawyers, and bankers. This is pushing up prices further for services, as well as property values and rents. It's also making it harder to get school admissions. Public transport remains limited, and the roads are often jammed. But for the rich, that's the price of certainty. And it seems they are more than willing to pay it.
For our next story, imagine this scenario. You walk into a doctor's office, you complain about pain, the doctor prescribes you medicines, she tells you exactly what you should do, but you ignore that advice, and after that you visit her office 24 times, every time with the exact same ailment. Well, that's the story of Pakistan. Pakistan is the wayward patient, and the doctor in this case is the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Since the year 1958, Pakistan has walked into the IMF office at least 24 times, and every time with the same plea, the request for a bailout. And every time the IMF has given them money. Each bailout came with the same prescription: reforms, accountability, transparency. That was the cure to Pakistan's problems. But what does Pakistan do? Well, it went home and kept consuming the same junk, in this case, the same bogus economic policies. So now the IMF has released an assessment of its worst patient. An assessment that is 186 pages long, and we'll start with a headline number: 6%. Corruption and elite privilege drains 6% of Pakistan's GDP every year. 6% of the GDP. Here's how Pakistan loses it: subsidies for the connected, tax exemptions for the influential, state contracts for friends, cousins, cousins of friends, and friends of cousins, and policies meant to serve only the elite. So those at the top get everything, and those at the bottom of the pyramid, get nothing. The IMF calls it state capture, which is a fancy academic way of saying that the state has been hijacked, looted, and pawned by the elite. If corruption had a loyalty card in Pakistan, it would have reached premium or platinum tier decades ago, because they've been doing it for a while now. Like I said, it began in 1958. That's the first time they went to the IMF. And since then, Pakistan has sought a bailout 24 times. That is not a statistic. That is a relationship status. Countries in crisis go to the IMF. Clearly, Pakistan is never not in crisis. It has the highest number of IMF bailouts in the world. Every government, military or civilian, has knocked on the IMF's door. There was a crisis in 2023. Pakistan almost defaulted, and the IMF saved it again. Meanwhile, the plunder continues. It is led by the elite club. That's what the IMF report says. It's a club that includes influential politicians, business families, powerful state institutions, and a few industries that enjoy tax breaks. Then there are Pakistan's many committees. The more complex the problem, the more committees they set up, like the SIFC, the Special Investment Facilitation Council. This is a civilian-military hybrid body. It was created in 2023, and its job was to fast-track investment, to cut the red tape, to attract capital, and to make Pakistan investor-friendly. That was the idea. But the execution is far from this. It wasn't simplified at all. And then there's the judiciary. With 2 million pending cases, the Supreme Court weighed down by delays and constitutional amendments that make it even weaker. If you zoom out, the problem is obvious. The military is the de facto ruler of Pakistan. The civilian government is there for show, but running the show is a group of elites. They call the shots. The judiciary is weak, so are all other systems. But none of this is news, is it? We've known this forever. This report says nothing that Pakistan has not been told before. The World Bank report says it. The United Nations says it. Pakistan's own economists say it, and Pakistan's citizens live it. The only difference is that now the IMF has quantified the problem. It has said, fix your governance and gain 5 to 6.5% of GDP over the next 5 years. But don't hold your breath for that to happen. The IMF has given Pakistan a roadmap. It has two options: reform and boost your GDP, or junk this report and wait for bailout number 25. No prizes for guessing which one Islamabad will choose. So at this point, the IMF might as well start preparing for the next bailout, and while they're at it, they could offer some loyalty points to Pakistan. Our next story is from Ayodhya. It is a sacred town in the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. Hindus revere it as the birthplace of Lord Ram, and it is home to the Ram Temple, one of the most important religious sites in the country. Today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi hoisted a religious flag on the top of this temple. The flag is called the Dharm Dhwaj. It marks the formal completion of the structure's construction, and the ceremony comes at a significant time. Ayodhya is seeing a record surge in pilgrims. Its tourism economy is expanding rapidly. By 2028, Ayodhya could generate 18,000 crore rupees a year. That's about $2 billion. And this rise is part of a wider shift across India. Temple tourism has grown sharply in recent years. The temple economy now stands at tens of billions of dollars. It supports jobs in transport, hospitality, and food services. The numbers tell a remarkable story. Our next report has more.
A saffron flag now flies atop the Ram temple in Ayodhya. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi performed the Dhwajarohan, or flag hoisting ceremony. The ceremony completes the temple's construction, a project centuries in the making. The temple was inaugurated in January 2024. The flag hoisted on its peak is known as the Dharma Dhwaj. Prime Minister Modi called it a symbol of truth, dharma, and devotion.
ये धर्म ध्वजा केवल एक ध्वजा नहीं, ये भारतीय सभ्यता के पुनर्जागरण का ध्वज है। इसका भगवा रंग, इस पर रचित सूर्यवंश की ख्याति, वर्णित ओम शब्द और अंकित कोविदार वृक्ष राम राज्य की कीर्ति को प्रतिरूपित करता है.
The timing of the event is significant. Ayodhya is now experiencing an unprecedented surge in pilgrims, and its transformation reflects a much larger shift across India. More than 160 million people visited Ayodhya in 2024. In just the first 6 months of 2025, over 230 million devotees arrived. By year's end, officials expect the total to cross 500 million. The economic transformation has been equally dramatic. The city now reportedly earns $900 million to $1.4 billion a year from visitors. By 2028, the figure may reach about 18,000 crore rupees or $2 billion. To support this demand, the government is also expanding infrastructure. More than $560 million is being spent on infrastructure, including a 1,407-acre Vedic township. But Ayodhya is only one chapter in a much wider story. Similar growth is being seen in major temple cities across India. Varanasi's Kashi Vishwanath temple has nearly quadrupled its daily visitors compared to before the pandemic. In Jammu and Kashmir, footfall at the Vaishno Devi temple has tripled. The Golden Temple in Amritsar welcomes around 100,000 visitors every day. Kerala's Guruvayur temple and Andhra Pradesh's Tirumala Tirupati temple have also seen sustained surges in visitor numbers. This rise is also reshaping the pilgrimage experience itself. A recent study shows bookings across 76 pilgrimage destinations rose 19% last year. 15 destinations grew by more than 25%. And more than one-third of all hotel rooms in pilgrimage towns were added in just the last 3 years. Travel behavior is shifting as well. Pilgrimage trips are getting shorter. 53% are single-night stays. Group travel has grown sharply, making up almost half of all bookings. Most travelers now book their trips less than 6 days before departure. Meanwhile, temple management systems are also modernizing to keep pace with this growth. Ayodhya, Varanasi, Puri and Tirumala are all using artificial intelligence-based systems to monitor crowds and improve safety. All of this activity feeds into one of India's rapidly growing economic sectors. The country's temple economy is reportedly valued at about $34 billion. It contributes around 2.32% of India's GDP. and it supports jobs in hospitality, food services, transport, retail, and tourism. The surge has brought opportunities through new jobs, better infrastructure, and rising local incomes. It has also brought new pressures, managing large crowds, protecting heritage sites, and balancing devotion with commercial demand. Yet, the transformation continues, and India's spiritual economy shows no signs of slowing down.
Is AI reading your private data? It's the biggest question of our times. Artificial intelligence has become the new normal. We talk to ChatGPT every day. We ask chatbots all sorts of questions. We feed it all sorts of personal information. But what does it do with this information, with this data? What happens to it? Do AI companies use it to train further models? And not just that, do these companies, AI companies, use your private data on the internet to train its models? Say your emails or your Facebook messages with an old friend. All of it is out there. Is it being used too? That's the question at the moment. Let's try and break it down. First question, is Google reading your emails? Is it using your Gmail data to train its models? The answer is yes and no. I know it's frustrating, but I'll explain why I say that. You see, Google's AI model is called Gemini. It is connected to other Google products, including Gmail, Google Drive, and Google Chat. But does it get data from it? Well, not until users give the permission. And where does Gemini get its data from? A host of things. Say the searches you make in your AI app, or any photo or video that you upload on it, or interactions with other apps on Gemini, through your messages, your phone call apps, if you have given permission. So it all depends on what permissions you give, the permissions that you've given to the app, which is why I also said no. But there's also the yes part of the answer. And I say this because Google is also sneaky. Say you're using Gmail, you activate smart features on it like compose emails or list calendar events. Then Google can access your data. And I know what you may be thinking. I had no idea about that. But here's where it gets even more sneaky. Earlier, if you wanted to share your data with Gemini, you had to actively opt in. You had to press that button. You have to give that permission. You knew you were allowing it. Now it's the opposite. If you don't want Gemini to use your data, you have to go digging through the settings and manually switch it off. Google has quietly moved the burden from the company to the consumer. And we only learned about it because a California lawsuit revealed it. And that's just the Google story. There's also Meta. Its AI model is called Llama. You may not have heard about it much, but Meta is really pushing the accelerator on its AI program. Again, does that mean they're using your data? Because we know Meta has a host of social media platforms. They have Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. All of it is owned by Meta. Say a person talks to Llama about diving. Meta's apps may start showing you diving gear to buy. They may start showing you reels about best places to dive. But is it sharing your messages? The answer is no. So your private conversations are safe at the moment. However, everything else is being used. Your public Instagram posts, your Facebook comments, that reel you made in 2021 with some random song, all of it can be used to train a Meta AI. If someone posts a picture of you publicly, even if you don't have a Meta account, Meta systems may learn from it. Basically, you don't even get an opt-out button. So your DMs may be safe for now, but your public profile, not so much. Because here's the problem. If you upload personal photos to a chatbot or voice notes or sensitive context in a prompt, that data may be stored, analyzed, or used for training unless you disable it. And many people simply don't know how to do it, or whether they have an option to disable it. And even if you don't do it, data about you reaches these AI models by some way or the other. So there's no way out, it seems. If you want to avoid that, check the permissions you have given these apps. It may seem like casual bureaucracy, saying yes to avoid reading documents, but go through it carefully. Know what you're sharing. Also, you should not upload personal photos to chatbots. You should not upload bank details. You should not upload private medical information. You should not use it for therapy. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has said it himself. He said chatbots are not therapists. You should not upload anything you would not want a stranger or a server to store, because your data could be stored. Your data could be used for model improvement. Your data could leak someday. Your data could get scraped or misinterpreted. AI companies are building the future, but they're doing it with the messiness of the present. And the present has one universal law. If you don't pay for the product, you are most likely the product. Our final story tonight is from Thailand. A rare storm has hit the country's south. It's a storm that comes only once in 300 years. Several provinces have been cut off, roads have disappeared underwater, and thousands of people have struggled to get to safety. The Thai government has declared an emergency, and the military has taken charge of the crisis. Aircraft and boats have been deployed to tackle the situation. Across the border, Malaysia has been hit too. 8 states have reported flooding in Malaysia. Thousands have been moved to shelters, and evacuation orders have been issued in several areas. Here's a report.
Southern Thailand has been hit by a once-in-300-year rainstorm. Several provinces have been affected. Towns have been cut off. Rivers have overflowed. And rescue teams have struggled to reach thousands of people trapped by rising water. 9 provinces have reportedly faced days of relentless rain. Some areas have recorded nearly 400 millimeters of rain. At least 19 people have died. More than 127,000 households have been affected. Roads, homes, and markets have gone underwater. And parts of the region have been left almost unreachable. The city of Hat Yai has seen some of the worst damage. Water levels rose rapidly. They reached more than 8 feet in parts of the city. Cars have gone underwater. A fire truck has been left half submerged, and entire neighborhoods have been cut off. People have tried to move however they can. Some have walked through waist-deep water. Some have held on to styrofoam boxes. Parents have used inflatable pools to carry their children, while many have been stranded inside homes and hotels for days. Thailand's Royal Irrigation Department says Hat Yai has recorded its heaviest rainfall in 3 centuries. It's a storm so rare that it has a probability of happening once in 300 years, and it has pushed southern Thailand into an emergency. Hospitals have been particularly hard hit. At Hat Yai Hospital, power and water have been partially cut. About 30 newborn babies in the infant ward on the 3rd floor, and their parents, have not been able to reach them. Nurses have worked with a single lamp for light. Fans have been placed around the cribs to keep the babies cool. Thailand has declared a state of emergency in Songkhla province. The military has taken charge of operations. C-130 aircraft have flown in food, water, and medicine. The Navy has prepared boats and equipment. An aircraft carrier has also been put on standby as a floating hospital. Military trucks, jet skis, and rescue boats have moved through flooded streets. Pumps have also been installed to drain the water. Across the border, Malaysia is facing a similar situation. More than 15,000 people have been moved to evacuation centers. 8 states have reported rising water. Rescue teams have waded through knee-high floods in northern towns. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has urged residents to follow evacuation orders. The disaster has stretched across borders. Families have been displaced. Communities have been isolated. And both countries have been forced into round-the-clock rescue work. For now, Southern Thailand and northern Malaysia are still waiting for clearer skies. The rain has eased in some places, but the floodwater has not. And millions of people are hoping the worst of this once-in-300-year storm is finally behind them.
You cannot kill what is already dead. Sounds deep, doesn't it? Trust me, it's not. This was Delhi's reaction when news of an ash cloud emerged. We just told you about the story. A volcano erupted in Ethiopia for the first time in 12,000 years, and it sent a massive ash cloud towards India. Most cities would be worried about it, but Delhi, not remotely. At AQIs of 500 to 800, ash clouds do not worry you. Like I said, you can't kill what's already dead. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. A drone hits a residential apartment in a Russian Black Sea port city. A dramatic video shows a drone lifting a man to safety during the Vietnam floods. And turkeys receive a grand welcome in Washington, D.C. ahead of the presidential pardon on Thanksgiving. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1963, U.S. President John F. Kennedy was buried at the Arlington National Cemetery. It was 3 days after he was assassinated. Nearly 1 million people attended his funeral procession. Leaders and representatives from more than 100 countries were also present. We are leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
They promised glory. They delivered fear. They shaped nations. They scarred generations. From brutal purges to propaganda machines, from stolen power to violent falls from the throne. Welcome to The Dictator, a series that strips away the myth and then exposes the men behind the tyranny. History remembers their power. Firstpost reveals their truth.